Hare Krishna. Today is Disappearance Day of Gaura Kishor Babaji Maharaj. He's here. And I feel very unqualified. And at the same time, I did want to speak about Gaura Kishor Babaji Maharaj on his Disappearance Day. So that's what we are going to do. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pustaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namini. Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pacharini. Nirvisishya Shunyavadi Bhaskasha Dijatarini. Hare Krishna. So we have some material to speak about Gaura Kishor Babaji Maharaj.
It's recording.
Yes. And so what I'm going to do is I want to read some first about his life, like a chronological biography type of thing, and then read about his latest pastime of his Disappearance Day, and also read some of what Prabhupada shared about Gaura Kishor Babaji Maharaj. And then after we can read some anecdotes. And what I want to share is that, Acharya means to teach by example. Acharya is teaching by example. And our current Acharya, our current link to the Parampara is Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, is showing us the way for us Westerners, for us Kali Yoga people, and how to make progress in spiritual lives. And by following Srila Prabhupada, then we get to see the map, and go about the map with all the different landmarks, and little by little progress in spiritual life. And by surrender to the spiritual master, by surrendering to Srila Prabhupada's instruction more and more, guidance by his example also, we get to make progress. And then there is the disciplic succession is also full of acharyas, like previous acharyas, that we can get to know. And I know I like to do that. I like to know the acharyas. I like to know them in a personal way. I like to relate to them in a personal way. Each of them, and I don't know many of them, but a few, seems to really support me in my spiritual life in a very different way. And so Gaura Kishor Babaji is in that line of disciplic succession. Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master at Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur he's called a walking encyclopedia, meaning he was such a scholar that nobody could defeat him. Nobody could argue with him, because he through his austerity and through his mission and super soul, that's what he manifests the most, is erudition. Like, amazing. He had knowledge about all the Veda. He had knowledge about astronomy, astrology, mathematics, and of course he had knowledge, the most important knowledge about the knowledge of the soul and the knowledge of the relationship of the soul with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and knowledge about the goal of that relationship is to serve with love and devotion. And then, interestingly, his spiritual master is Gaura Kishor Babaji, who is basically illiterate, not quite completely illiterate, but basically illiterate. Sometimes Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur said that he couldn't even sign his name. So he appeared illiterate, and in fact, he was as erudite than Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, because knowledge of the goal of life, knowledge of the supreme relationship with the Lord, knowledge of how to serve the Lord, and who we are in this, in this human form, is beyond any type of scholarship. That, in fact, everything that most of what Prabhupada says about Gaura Kishor Das Babaji, usually he makes this point that how it's not about knowledge, it's not about learning, it's not about books, it's about transcendental knowledge, which is above any material qualification. And then, Gaura Kishor Das Babaji, in the line of disciplic succession, he received initiation from Bhakti Vinod Thakur. And Bhakti Vinod Thakur, it's a different flavor again. So each of the aksharyas have very, very specific flavor. And they are all canvassing for the same goal. They are all canvassing for the same goal, is the goal of helping the conditioned soul going back to Godhead. So the special lack, and we will speak more about Gaura Kishor Das Babaji, but his special lack and his special empowerment, which is not very comfortable, is to really being able to point out all the deception, the cheating in the name of religion, the cheating in the name of spirituality, and really see the pretension of the pretension that can manifest in our spiritual endeavor. So it's not very comfortable to read about him, because it creates such a mirror of all the way we can cheat ourselves, and in the name of religion, in the name of spiritual practice, in the name of advancement, and really being a pretender. And somehow he had almost an extra senses. There's many stories where he was blind at the end of his life. He couldn't see, and usually he was in four walls, so he will not see anyone. But he knew exactly if someone in a town or city, someone was like a big pandit, or also a bhajanit, but someone was doing bhajan and all that, where the deception were, or if they were like cultivating sense gratification at the same time that they were giving a message to the world that they were a pure devotee. So we read more about that. So where I want to start is pranam. I'm going to read it from this book because I like the translation very much. Namo Gaura Kishoraya Shakshadvaryagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Vandambujayate Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances until Gaura Kishor Das Babaji Maharaj, the spiritual master of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, who is renunciation personified, is always merged in the feeling of separation from an intense love of Krishna. So is renunciation personified, and we will, as we read, we will really see that. And that, again, renunciation personified, his level of renunciation is definitely not comfortable for any tinge of materialism that's in our heart. And because that materialism oozes in so many places. And Bhakti, Gaura Kishor Das Babaji, he sees that oozing, is expert seeing that oozing of materialism in everybody's heart. And what I understand about Gaura Kishor Das Babaji is that if someone approach him with humility, not pretending anything, and really meet themselves where they are at, which is, with materialistic agendas or desire, then Gaura Kishor Das Babaji would give shelter to such a person. So we'll just read a little bit about his life. Srila Gaura Kishor Das Babaji Maharaj appeared sometime in the 1830s in the district of Faridapur, adjacent to the place called Tepakola in the village of Yagyana in East Bengal, or what is known as Bangladesh. So we can see right there that it was coming from a family that didn't really keep track of the birth of their children, because there is no really anything that we don't know the exact date of his birth. We just know it's in the 1830s. So that's something to notice. He appeared in a village which is situated on the bank of the Padma River as the son of Vaishya, most probably called Vamsidas. According to one biographer, however, Vamsidas was the name of Srila Gaura Kishor before he took the renounced order. During his boyhood, his mother and father arranged a marriage for him, and he remained in household affairs for more than 20 years. While the householder, he worked as a broker in the grain business. But even at that time, he exhibited his spirituality. After the dismiss of his wife, Srila Gaura Kishor left his business and went to Vrindavan. There, he approached Srila Bhagavat Das Babaji, one of the foremost disciples of Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, and accepted from him the traditional Paramsa Vaishnava Babaji dress. So to put things in perspective, there is different types of devotees, advanced devotees. There is a Kaustya-Nandi and there is a Bhajananandi. And all of them are canvassing in a different way. And Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur for most of in life, they are Kaustya-Nandis. They preach, they go out of their way to really serve the conditioned soul. They reach out to support the Lord's desire to see the conditioned soul back to Krishna. And then the Bhajananandi, like Gaura Kishor Das Babaji and Jagannath Das Babaji, they are more focused on their focused on their relationship with Krishna. And they, in a sense, they do preach too by their behavior. They do preach too. And Gaura Kishor Das Babaji, so much so how it wasn't about him. It wasn't about his spiritual life. It was really about being able to show an example of high level of renunciation for our own benefit. So I'm going to continue. After this, he became completely renounced and sojourned under trees in various parts of the 168 miles Rajamandal circle of Vrindavan. He continuously acted thus for a period of approximately 30 years. So for 30 years, he was just staying under a tree or different trees every night in Vrindavan, very much like the same behaviors that we see manifested in the 6 Goswamis. They didn't have like a home, or they didn't have a place to stay. They were satisfied within Krishna's energy. They were satisfied wherever they were because 30, yeah, 30. For 30 years, he was in Vrajmandal, around the 168 miles of the Rajmandal district. And he was just being under a tree. Wow. And completely renounced and just, we'll see, he wasn't eating or anything. We'll see. There's a lot. During this time, he would sometimes travel to the holy place of pilgrimages, northern India and western India, as well in the Gaura Mandal, the circle of Navadvip. He associated with Srila Swarup Das Babaji Maharaj in Jagannath Puri, whose ecstatic activities were recounted by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his autobiography. He also associated with Sri Bhagavan Das Babaji in Kalna. He went to Korea, the holy site of Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Bhajan, and associated with the Srila Chaitanya Babaji, Das Babaji. Also, all of these Babaji were pure and exalted devotees. Srila Gaura Kishor Das Babaji became very famous among the great devotees of Vrindavan and was awarded the appreciated title of Bhajananandi. Even though he received such an honor, he never endeavored for even a modicum of material sense gratification and totally disapproved of the secret material desires of pseudo-renunciates. He was entirely removed from such inclination and will perform his pure unalloyed devotional practice alone in a profound devotional mood. So there already we see that he was not interested in any name, fame, wealth, anything that come from renunciation. Because, in India, people are because of their piety, because of the Vedic culture, very easily they can be worshipping renounced people, like who they consider spiritual. And in the name of spirituality, there's a lot of cheater who just, do their bhajan, all their bhajan and appear very elevated in their bhajan, but then maybe they are thinking of sense gratification or maybe performing sense gratification in the form of, sexual intercourse with women or in a form of taking some kind of intoxication in a form in different gross form and subtle form. So Babaji Maharaj, Gaura Kishor Babaji Maharaj was like so far from that. He really didn't show any sign that he was advanced. He didn't want name. He didn't want people to worship him. He didn't want people to notice him. So that was his mood. In the year 1897, during the month of Falgun, when he was in his 60s, and at that time when the Yoga Pit, birthplace of Sri Chaitanya, was revealed by the exertion of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Gaura Kishor Das Babaji proceeded to Navadvip Dham from Vrindavan under the instruction of Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. So he went, that's about 100 miles, I think, by foot.
Vrindavan to Navadvip?
Mm-hmm.
1,000.
Oh, 1,000, yeah. So we can imagine him walking by himself, doing that. From this time until his disappearance, Srila Gaura Kishor Das Babaji remained in Sri Navadvip Dham, living in different villages and realizing their non-difference from the holy place of Vrindavan. He begged by gathering dry foodstuff from the householders of the holy Dham. He would sometimes offer those foodstuffs to the personality of Godhead by the simple expedient of holding them in his hand. In order to cook, he will collect dried wood from the past, and he will wash earthen pots discarded from the villagers along the roadside near the Ganges River on the occasion of eclipses. Due to the effect of an eclipse, such a pot were considered impure and unstable. So he will just gather whatever people will disregard and don't want because it's bad omen or because it's useless for them. So that's what he will gather. In order to clothe himself, he will go to the shore of the Ganges and collect and wash discarded clothes that have been used to cover corpses at the burning ghat. Thus, he always remained independent of the support of others, simply by utilizing items of no value to anyone else. In such a manner, he obtained the practical necessities of life. In 1897, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur constructed his place of bhajan on the bank of the Saraswati River at Godrum, the islands of the 9 islands of Navadvip Dham, which represent kirtan, recitation of the name and glories of God. That ashram, which was called Swananda Sukhada Kunj and consisted of a moderate 2-story house, several small outbuildings, and a walled compound, was a gathering place for exalted souls. Previously, it had been the site of Lord Nityananda's Namahat, the place from whence Lord Nityananda inaugurated his preaching exploit in Bengal under the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Here the Thakur recited and explained the Srimad Bhagavatam and other topics regarding the conclusion of devotional service. And Srila Gaura Kishor Das Babaji Maharaj will come and hear those talks with great delight. The Thakur often cited the behavior of Sri Gaura Kishor to elucidate the meaning of the word nirapeksha, indifference. He often discussed the unequal renunciation, pure devotion, and attachment to Krishna that Babaji Maharaj displayed. In the days of the Thakur's retirement, the two souls met and associated in great happiness. So we can desire to be there while they are associated together. I do have that desire to be like a mice or roaches, anything, and just witness and appreciate and be with those two Thakurs together, two great devotees, great Vaishnav, discussing the Srimad Bhagavatam together. For some time, Babaji Maharaj stayed in Surabhi Kunj and performed Hari Bhajan. His room, which adjoined the wall of the Kunj, had been preserved. Babaji Maharaj displayed fervent enthusiasm upon hearing the discourses of the Thakur. His only possession were the Tulasi beads he wore around his neck and the Tulasi Mala rosary he kept in his hand for counting his round. He also kept a few books such as Narottam Das Thakur, Pratana, and Prema Bhakti Chandrika. Sometimes he wore a torch clothes and sometimes he went naked. At other times, he would utter harsh sound of disgust for no apparent reason. Ugh. Even so, it appears that Gaura Kishor Das Babaji was not a learned Sanskrit scholar. Still, the purport and conclusion of all scriptures were luminous in his heart and character. It was never possible for anyone to serve him. He was never willing to accept any kind of service from any person. Whosoever witnessed his unearthly genuine condition of renunciation was reminded of the pastime of Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. All kinds of divine powers and opulences were always waiting at his commands, ready to serve him. Sometimes such a power will be manifest in the form of his appearing to be omniscient. He was always able to reveal the deceitful nature lying within the heart of pretenders. Although a person resided outside his immediate purview, Srila Gaura Kishor could elaborately and scrutinizingly reveal the person's cheating nature because he was in direct contact with Super Soul. This ability, however, was not his principal virtue. He exhibited the highest standard of devotion to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, and because of his exemplary character, he was recognized as a personification of the deepest degree of separation from Lord Sri Krishna. This is what distinguished him from most other Vaishnavas and what spread the luster of his lotus feet. His renunciation was really amazing and exemplary and superior, and his devotion to the Lord. And this devotion, we will see how his devotion to Lord Chaitanya is all melting. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur has written, many young, clever, old, learned, foolish, proud, and reasonable persons came into contact with Srila Gaura Kishor Das Babaji, yet they could not realize his identity. Visiting the mystic opulence of the devotees of Lord Krishna, many persons come to consult with Srila Gaura Kishor Das Prabhu about his insignificant desire. They would always get suggestions. Those suggestions were usually the cause of their disappointment. Innumerable persons accepted the Babaji dress and acted as devotees of the Lord, but actually they were impostors, far away from being real sadhus. Srila Gaura Kishor never accepted such a false way of life. His sincerity was apparent in itself. His loving attitude was such that even when he opened a very opulent offering, his renunciation predominated. In fact, there was a lot of people who approached Babaji. Like there was a king, for example. The king said, "Come, live in my palace. I take care of you. I have servants and all that." And he insisted until Gaura Kishor Das Babaji said, "Okay, yes, we'll associate together." He said, "Come and live with me, and I will build a hut for you." And of course, the king didn't do any of that. And most of his story, most of the anecdotes that I read from this book, and this book was mainly compiled based on Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writings about Gaura Kishor Das Babaji that he published in his monthly magazine. So this book was mainly published based on the writing of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And there is so many times that people will come to see Gaura Kishor Das Babaji and ask him, like, "Please guide me." And Gaura Kishor Das Babaji will give them like, "Okay, just give up everything and chant Hare Krishna." Basically, often that's that. And most people, they will leave very disappointed because they didn't hear what they wanted to hear from him. So I know as I was reading all those anecdotes, I often laughed. I was laughing by myself because it's really a very amazing character that wasn't concerned at all about what people will think about him. And so that's something that I found very helpful. Srila Gaura Kishor Das Babaji never displayed any taste for those persons who are inimical to him. He also never manifested any special affection for those very dear to him. He would often express himself saying, "In this material, I am all alone in my service to Lord Krishna. Everyone is worshipable by me. Anyone not worthy transcendental topics is that many materialistic, foolish person masquerading as devotee and imitating pure devotion will come and surround him. They will consider that they were the dear object of his affection, while they engage their mind in so many worldly sense objects. Srila Gaura Kishor Babaji will never display any intention of driving them away, and also no symptom of a compromising attitude." Okay, I'm going to read now, just because I want to make sure I get to it. I'm going to read some excerpt from lecture from Srila Prabhupada, just for us. I want us to hear from Srila Prabhupada about Gaura Kishor Das Babaji. So therefore, Gaura Kishor Das, that's a lecture on Srimad Bhagavatam 1.8, which are, the prayer of Queen Kunti. And so therefore, Gaura Kishor Das Babaji, he remained Niskinchana. And his disciple, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he also remained Niskinchana, although he possessed so many temples, because nothing was for his personnel but for Krishna. And this Krishna is like, not materially motivated, like really means materially satiated, that there is nothing materially that attractive. And there is a very, very funny pastime where Gaura Kishor Das Babaji is invited in beautiful houses, and he sees those houses as like smelling like stool, like beautiful houses, beautiful places, and so it's like a latrine. It's like a place for passing stool and urine, because for him, anything that has any materialistic energy to it is just rejectable, 100% rejectable. And on the other side, he was spending most of his time in bathrooms, and he wasn't disturbed at all by the smell of pee and poo. So that's something Kinshana. So one may question that. Your Guru Maharaj was sitting on the ground in a municipal lavatory because he did not like that anybody should disturb him. He was sitting by the side of the municipal lavatory because so many people will come for darshan and ashivada He did not like it. He did not like to be disturbed by the Ashirvada. You see, they will not take any spiritual instruction. They are thinking that here is a saintly person and he'll bless me. It's about me, like I want to be blessed. I want to make advancement. I want to do all those things that I will become a saintly person. So I've got now 1,000 and I take 10,000, that's all. Therefore they come. They do not come to take any spiritual instruction. Therefore, it is a botheration. It is botheration. So Gaura Das Babaji Maharaj did not like this botheration. He was sitting by the side of a municipal lavatory so that this record will not come out of the bad smell and will not disturb me, you see? So it's like so not Brahmanical to go around bad smell. And so all those people who are, thinking themselves very elevated Brahmins, they will not come around and will not bother him by asking for blessing. So Maharaj Mahendranandi, he had organized one Sankirtan festival. So he came to Gaura Kishor Das Babaji and to invite him. So after many requests, Gaura Kishor Das Babaji Maharaj said, Maharaj, you have got many tenants. You are Maharaj. Why you are trying to make me your tenant? Because you are rich, you also want. As your tenant carries your order, so also you want me. So where you are, so why you are, it's a lecture, so we need to follow. No, sir, no. You are my Lord. Whatever you say, I shall carry out. Will you carry out? Babaji Maharaj said, will you carry out? Why not? So he says that, don't go home. Sit down here, chant Hare Krishna. Prabhupada kind of laughed at Gaura Kishor Das Babaji. He fled away, laughter, you see? So he was very humorous also, Gaura Kishor Das Babaji, that if you are so obedient, then I ask you, don't go home. Better give up your dress and chant Hare Krishna here. So that's how he will give instruction, and in that way he will naturally highlight and magnify the people's attachment. Not that they didn't need to have attachment, but he was highlighting the pretension that I don't have attachment. So another lecture, I may not have the whole thing. So my Guru Maharaj was a great scholar, and his Guru Maharaj, from a literal point of view, he could not even sign his name, Gaura Kishor Das Babaji Maharaj. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur asked Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati to accept Gaura Kishor Das Babaji Maharaj as his spiritual master, that you go and take initiation for Gaura Kishor Das Babaji Maharaj. I don't have the rest, so it's a funny lecture too. So Prabhupada makes that point a lot, that in order to make advancement in spiritual life, there is no need for there is no material qualification, not even heredity, not even knowledge or being a scholar or all that. So I'm going to go, I don't know how far we will go to, I have so many things I like to read to you because they are so funny. But I'm going to read the final pastime of Gaura Kishor Das Babaji. His entrance into the eternal pastime of the Lord. In the Bengali year of 1322, at dawn, on the 13th day of the month of Kartik, corresponding to November 16, 1915, Srila Gaura Kishor Das Goswami entered the eternal pastimes of the Lord. That day at sunrise, Srila Sarasvati Thakur left Sri Mayapur for the Rani Dharmashala at Kulia, where Babaji Maharaj had been staying. The head priests of Navadvip's various temples and ashram began to argue among themselves about where Babaji Maharaj's spiritual body would be interred. A heated argument arose. There was a material motive behind the dispute, for the contending parties considered that establishing the Babaji's Samadhi at their ashram or temple would put them in a position to earn handsomely from the pilgrim who will flock to the tomb of the Paramahamsa. Srila Saraswati Thakur opposed their illegitimate attempts, however, apprehending a breath of peace. Navadvip's inspector of police, who was at the time Mr. Jatendranath Sima, arrived there. After much controversy, the various hypocritical Vaishnavas stated their position. Srila Saraswati Thakur is not a sannyasi and thus has no right to prepare a samadhi for a person who has renounced his home. Hearing their pronounced, Saraswati Thakur replied in a voice like thunder, saying, I am the sole disciple of Paramahamsa Babaji Maharaj. Even so, I have not accepted sannyas. I am a celibate brahmachari, and by the grace of Babaji Maharaj, I am not an hypocritical renunciate secretly addicted to abominable habits or fornication as some monkey-like people are. I take pride in saying this as a bearer of Babaji Maharaj's shoes. If there is someone here with a renunciate of truly stainless character, then he can come forward and arrange for the samadhi. I have no objection to that. He who within the last 1 year, or 6 months, 3 months, 1 month, or even 3 days had not indulged in illicit association with women will be able to judge this spiritual blissful body. If anyone else touches it, he will be completely ruined. Hearing these words, the inspector of police said, how will the evidence of this be produced? Srila Saraswati Thakur rejoined, I will believe what they say. After this challenge was offered, the Babajis turned their back one by one and departed from that place. The inspector of police was dumbfounded. Hare Krishna. Some of the people remaining were advised that Babaji Maharaj had expressed a last desire that his body be dragged through the street of Navadvip in the dust of the dam. So this Saraswati Thakur replied, also we are fools, inexperienced and offenders. We will still not be disinclined to understand the true meaning of those humility-filled words which have been spoken by my Gurudev to destroy the pride of worldly-minded people. Even Krishna Chandra will personally think himself successful if he carries my Gurudev on his head or shoulder. After the departure of Haridas Thakur, Sri Gaura Sundar took the spiritual body of the Thakur on his lap and danced. What dignity he adorned it with. What dignity he adorned it with. Therefore, following in the footsteps of Sriman Mahaprabhu, we shall also bear Babaji Maharaj's spiritual blissful body on our heads. That's so beautiful. On the following day, November 17, 1915, on the Uttana Ekadasi, in the afternoon, and according to the scriptural ordinance, Srila Saraswati Thakur led the body of his Guru to rest on a newly formed sound spit on the Ganges at Kulia. A low-caste person of Lower Gaha from the district of Kishor donated his property and claimed to give up all right to it. Yet, after some time, he forgot his promise and utilized that land for various illicit materialistic activities. Also, he was criticized for this. He maintained his pride and committed offenses to the eternal associate of Lord Chaitanya. 16 years later, By the will of Gaura Kishor Das Babaji Maharaj, his place of rest was eroded by the river Ganges and inundated by it. Srila Saraswati Thakur organized a party of men and recovered the samadhi intact and brought it to the bank of Radhakund at Rajapatana, where he reestablished it before a memorial of Sri Kunamanjari. Nitya Gauranga Das Adhikari, a disciple of Srila Saraswati Thakur, helped to construct a beautiful Samadhi temple on the site. We close our recounting. Well, okay. So let's see, what time is it? I have so many other things I like to read, and maybe reading 25, just one of those adding notes, maybe a short one. Okay, it's called Displaying Ecstatic Symptom. So there's a lot of anecdotes in this book, but I'm going to read just one and then we'll stop. Displaying ecstatic symptoms. On one occasion, Srila Babaji Maharaj was sitting within his bhajan kutir in Sri Navadvipan, loudly chanting Hare Krishna. Other persons who had assembled there were also chanting. At this time, someone came and began to display different ecstatic symptoms, such as crying. Some of the assembled devotees thought, lo, that person has attained higher stage of devotional ecstasy by chanting the glories of the Lord. Srila Gaura Kishor Das Babaji, however, immediately requested the man to leave. Some of the onlookers became disturbed by this and left. Babaji Maharaj commented, one who has actually attained love of Godhead will never display the symptoms thereof, but will keep them hidden from the general populace. A chaste wife becomes very embarrassed when she has to show any part of her body in public, and she thus keeps her body thoroughly covered. In the same way, when one has real devotion for the Supreme Lord and become elevated to love of Godhead, he always feels embarrassed to exhibit symptoms of ecstasy and always keeps such a symptom hidden. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu demonstrated this principle on numerous occasions. Upon meeting Srila Ramananda Roy on the bank of the Godavari, for example, he embraced him and felt so much ecstasy that, along with Ramananda, he was overwhelmed with spiritual emotion. However, in consideration of the fact that Ramananda Roy was the governor of Madras and was accompanied by many persons who could not understand such transcendental dealing, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu restrained himself. On another occasion, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met with Vallabhacharya near Prayag, he was overwhelmed with ecstatic feeling, but he again restrained himself, feeling bashful in the presence of a person who, though exactly, was not his intimate associate. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu felt great ecstatic love when they began discussing Krishna. The Lord checked his feeling because he felt shy before Vallabha. Although the Lord restrained himself externally, ecstatic love raged with him. That there was no checking that. Vallabha was astonished to detect this. So, like Gaura Kishor Das Babaji, he wasn't manifested any symptom. And through his reading, I got that it's something to check, to check how much of our spirituality is a show, to show others that maybe we have some advancement, some knowledge, something, and how much, is it real, not a pretension, and if it is real, then Babaji Maharaj tells us it will be hidden. And there is another part of this book where he said devotees are hidden from materialistic. So as long as we have materialistic desire or propensities inside our heart, the true identity of devotees is going to be hidden from us. There was a story where Babaji Maharaj was, I think he was still in Braj Mandal at that time. And many people were coming to see him, and they were asking, like blessing about so many blessings. But you could see that in those blessings, in those desire to be advanced, it was like really desire for fame and name, and desire for prosperity, desire for so many things, but not real desire to surrender to the Lord. So what he did, he had a very, very rich disciple person who were following him and admiring him, and said, please give me a lot of money. I don't remember, like $1,000, let's say $1,000 a month. Babaji Maharaj asked for $1,000. Give me $1,000 a month. And then he hired a beautiful maid, a woman maid that will take care of him. And then when the people of the villages saw that, they completely renounced Babaji Maharaj. They left and said, they began to criticize him, like, look at, he's a materialistic man. He hired a woman to take care of him, and he's getting money every month. So she just left, and they began to criticize him as a materialistic man. And of course, I imagine he had a good laugh about that. The last thing I want to read to you, it's because Babaji Maharaj, he really loved Narottam Das Thakur. And he will quote from that song. And Prabhupada sings that song so beautifully, so you can listen to it, how Prabhupada sings it. The name of the song is Gaura Pahu, and it's part of Bhartana. And I will just read the translation. I invited my spiritual death, not by worshipping Lord Chaitanya. Due to my neglect, I have lost the transcendental treasure of love for Krishna. I rejected the real purpose of my life and strove for worldless things. I am drowning in an ocean of birth and death because of my own misdeeds. I gave up the association of devotees to enjoy sense gratification in an association of common nonsense men, and immediately Maya caught me and entangled me in a web of fruitive activities. I have always drunk the most dangerous poisons of sense gratification, and therefore I could not merge myself into the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya. Why am I living? What is my happiness? What did Narottam Das not die long, long ago? And Prabhupada has purport to that song, so Prabhupada really also loved Narottam Das Thakur. So I felt like I will end with that. Gaura Kishor Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. My hope is that I didn't offend Maharaj, him speaking about him. That's whatever pretension he sees in my heart, that he will burn it to ashes. Thank you all. Any question, comments about Gaura Kishor Das Babaji Maharaj? So it's today's Ekadasi, and there's also a fast until noon. So we are advised to follow Ekadasi and still break fast at noon. And then the feasting is supposed to be tomorrow. And I was thinking, like, the whole world is going to feast, because it's not the whole world, but in America they are going to feast. Of course, they are not going to feast for Gaura Kishor. The matter, yeah, the whole world is matter. So tomorrow is Thanksgiving, so many devotees are going to feast for Gaura Kishor Das Babaji's honor, in honor of Gaura Kishor Das Babaji's. Any sharing what's happening for you? Questions? I have, yeah.
I'm wondering, I mean, you sort of, I think, highlighted that he was exposing where they're not really at by like sort of humorously encouraging them to like surrender like everything would really be like an expose. I thought to ask maybe if you would like to elaborate a bit about it more, because it's still somewhat difficult for me to understand, because it seems that he was not really meeting them where they're at. He was like trying to like challenge them, right? And oh, you want to chant Hare Krishna with me? So yeah, just sit down here, give up everything. It's like, why would you ask someone to do that?
Okay, so I appreciate your question. Like it doesn't seem that he's meeting people where they are at, and then asking them to renounce everything. My understanding of his mood was really to highlight the pretension.
Mm-hmm.
I believe if someone was really wanted to be met where they are at, with humility and approaching Babaji Maharaj with full humility and acceptance of where they are at, that Babaji Maharaj will guide them, because he had people following him.
Mm-hmm.
And what he was exposing is a pretension of people. Oh, Maharaj, I love you so much, and you're such a great devotee, and I want Radha Krishna. I just want to surrender. I want to serve Radha Krishna. And then, kind of presenting themselves as more advanced than they really were.
Mm-hmm.
Then Babaji Maharaj, okay, well, you're so advanced, just, you don't have any material attachment. You don't have any attachment to comfort or name and fame or attachment to women or attachment to anything. So then come and just sit with me and chant Hare Krishna and don't worry about anything.
That gives them the mirror, and
that's my understanding of reading. It's not like he was not meeting them where they were at, because where they are at was pretension. It was not honest, like there is so much pretension going on, and we can all look at that's what Babaji Maharaj is so helpful for me, is that where is it I am pretending? Regardless, it doesn't matter if we are a Hare Krishna devotee or Christian or anything. It's very, very helpful for us to see, where am I pretending to be more advanced than I am? Because if I'm pretending that I'm more advanced than I am, I cannot start my spiritual life where I am at. Yeah, if I'm trying to go to, like, he's speaking sometime about people who are, like absorb themselves in pastime of Krishna, but they haven't yet, conquered their basic, senses. They haven't yet, understood like that. Yeah, the first step in spiritual life is to decrease the fever of material attachment. Prabhupada said, you will see your advancement in spiritual life by looking at the thermometer of material attachment. And, we see in the name of spirituality and in a Gaudiya Vaishnava, communities, there is so much cheating and so much pretension in the name of Bhakti Yoga that support people like being, show of something, but while at the same time, the fever is really, really high. So and then if the fever is really high, what Babaji Maharaj is pointing out also in some of the story is that fever is going to completely contaminate the pastime of Krishna. It will contaminate our approach to those elevated topics. It's going to be contaminated with the fever. And so, after that, you become all sick. And, I'm looking at myself, and I really want to pull those weeds. When I become aware and reading about Babaji Maharaj, it's like uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. Like I'm just like, where is the pretension, and where is it that I'm thinking I'm more advanced than I am, or I'm trying to show that I'm more advanced than I am, even if I don't show it, like just my own thinking. Because Babaji Maharaj didn't think like he was advanced. Not at all. But he wanted to serve all the residents of the Dharma all the time. And he was seeing everybody as more advanced than he is. Did I respond to your question? Yeah. And I do believe that if a sincere soul, because he had people who stayed around him, will approach them and really coming from a place of really meeting themselves where they are at with humility, and approaching without pretension, without like wanting to make Babaji Maharaj a pet, Like, look, I'm associating with pure devotee. I must be someone special because I'm associating with God, Krishnadas Babaji. All those things. Like, it was just like, he was so disgusted by it. He was so disgusted by anything like that. Yeah. Sarah?
Hi, Krishna. I can relate to being uncomfortable looking at the pretension. And I was hearing you say, like, if we're trying to be absorbed in the pastimes and all that, and not looking at the basic, like where I'm at, then, I'm not starting with the good numbers. I'm not starting where I'm at. So I'm starting with ignorance. And also I'm imagining that it's still important to read and chant, and like that's still where you need to start.
Yeah. So I appreciate. Yeah. So it's like a mentality that I think, like what I was responding to Amachandra, there's a mentality there that Gaura Keshodas Babaji is like cutting. Sadhu means to cut, and it was extremely cutting. And of course, hearing and chanting, the place of Bhaktivinoda Thakur is in Kirtan. Kirtan means to hear, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur was reciting the Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada gave us Krishna book in our book reading, like our woman Vaishnavi book reading. We are going to read Krishna book, and we are going to do that and absorb ourselves in the pastime of Krishna with the guidance of Srila Prabhupada, our current Acharya. And with the guidance of the current Acharya, then in a sense, we are protected from like the pretension of absorbing ourselves in the mood of the gopis or in the mood of coward boy, or absorbing ourselves in a way that's material, that's covered by the material fever, because that risk is there. And Prabhupada speak about this risk in Krishna book. So it's finding the balance. Okay, yes, we want to hear about the Lord. We want to know the Lord's pastime. We want to know Gaura Kishor Das Babaji's pastime. In a sense, reading his pastime, we could also like use that material fever, even just hearing or reading about his pastime. So it's kind of spiritual life. And I wrote some points here for me. And one of the points I put is that the razor edge of spiritual life, that there is some razor edge. It's like it can be cutting. And we, by being aware, by hearing from Srila Prabhupada about it, about the Sarja tendency, our tendency to like want to be more advanced than we are, and it's impersonalism in different form. Then Prabhupada constantly in his book, he helps us to name and identify weeds in our hearts that are going to impede our ultimate success in spiritual life, to come to be completely absorbed in the pleasure and service of Rama and Krishna. So yes, so that balance of hearing and chanting, and while we are hearing and chanting, through the spiritual master guidance, learning to meet ourselves where we are at, because Srila Prabhupada constantly, like, is pointing out, is giving us the highest, and while he's giving us the highest, he said, you're not there, here is where you are at, and look at that, and really identify. He gave us so much guidance for us to identify where we are at, and he also wants us to hear about the destination. Like in a Bhagavad Gita class, Dear Govinda was speaking about the map and having a map and knowing where we are at. So spiritual life means really taking the time to know where I am at, and from that developing a lot of humility, because really it shouldn't be difficult to be humble in Kali Yoga. We have imperfect senses, and we have so much hypocrisy, quarrel for nothing, just the mind, everything. The whole society is organized in a way that's not even conducive for spiritual life. It's really, if we were really to connect with our position in Kali Yoga and the position in this body and our lack of qualities, like even cleanliness, basic quality, cleanliness, austerity, the sense of sacrifice, or like sense of compassion, like it should be easy, but the thing is that the less advanced we are in spiritual lives, the more arrogant we are. And that arrogance is part of the materialistic fever, and it turns to creep in spiritual life. It turns to contaminate spiritual life. Or that's a weed that when we water the creeper of bhakti, we feed the weed, and the weed kind of grow. And so to know where we are at, Srila Prabhupada spent a lot of time in his guidance, because he's the one who really is made to guide us, is our current acharya, our current guide, to really know what to do with that situation that's given in this body. And also hear about the destination. Both are there. But hearing at the destination is quite different than identifying that's where I am at. And that's what Gaura Kishor does. Babaji is kind of cutting through. Did I respond to your question, Sal?
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and as we read Krishna book in our Vaishnavi reading group, we will see that. We'll see like the constant balance of Srila Prabhupada's guidance to approach Krishna's pastime in a way that protects us from the sahaja tendencies. Thank you.
One thing I really appreciate about his austerities is that for me they also show the transcendental nature of bhakti, and that so much of training within Vaishnavism is about external hygiene and cleanliness in order to like revive our inner purity. But there's so much rules and regulation, and you look at something like not eating meat and how impure like dead flesh is, and then him like collecting fish bones and throwing them around his bhajan kutir to not be disturbed, or doing his bhajan in bathrooms. Like there's a funny story of my Param Gurudev being sent to him by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and he'd been in this latrine for like weeks, and him and the godbrother are like trying to get him to unlock the door, and he wouldn't for hours until he heard that they were sent by Bhaktisiddhanta. And they like opened the door, but he wouldn't come out. He like made them come in. It's like we were told like, if you even go in the bathroom, then you can't like, really do any seva or anything. And so I think it's really beautiful that he's simultaneously like in discouraging, pretending, he's also showing like a transcendental example of how bhakti goes beyond like all of those considerations.
Or beyond rule and regulation, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you appreciate that. Well, in fact, what he was doing, he was using those rule and regulation to weed out imposters. Because imposters are maybe like really attached to the rule and regulation. And he was using the rule and regulation like that, the imposters that are really not seeing with spiritual eyes and who are pretending that they will go away, like asking money from the king when he's a renounced order of life, and or putting the fish bones, or being in a place that smells of pee, or so many things. He used those rule and regulation to weed out what wasn't bhakti. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. That's the superficial like show of spiritual advancement. Then use that to counteract the pretension. It's quite funny. Yeah, he will use the pot that they are so inauspicious, and the pots that he will cook in were rejected because they were super inauspicious. And the corpse there, all that. Hare Krishna.
I appreciate your presentation on Srila Gaura Kishor Das Babaji. I was thinking to emphasize the principle of two principles. one to, for all the acharyas, it's like making distinctions, knowing what's the example to follow and what are the details not to imitate. With Gaura Kishor Das Babaji, like okay, the one or two stories you read there, they were relatively tame.
So tame.
Yeah. So for the Gaura Kishor Das Babaji, there's a whole lot of details not to imitate, just so we're clear about that. But the principle of, yes, I mean, he's there, but like aspiring towards renunciation of material, aspiring towards a full attachment to chanting Hare Krishna, pure devotion, and really noticing any weeds of desire for honor, profit, adoration, distinction. And so just that with all the acharyas, and that's then, yeah, what's the principle to follow and what's the details not to imitate.
Yeah, it's a really important point here. Like, you know, we need those rule and regulation. However, like the rule and regulation in themselves, they are not spirituality, and people use them for pretension. So so not to imitate and go in a retreat and chant Hare Krishna, and at the same time understand the principle of this specific, like his message and his way of life. I really appreciate the fact that he really had equal compassion towards people who didn't like him or people who liked him. Like his compassion, the compassion that he manifested and is still manifesting doesn't have any barrier. And his compassion is so deep that he wants to torpedo, I use that word. He wants to torpedo any materialistic consciousness that's, stays there with us. And, like through reading about him and all the unorthodox ways that he manifests himself. Yeah, I could see his deep compassion. And today is Disappearance Day. We can remember Gaura Kishor Das Babaji, and we can pray. It's a great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather, a great-great-great-grandfather. And we can pray to Gaura Kishor Das Babaji, having in that, like, please show me my pretension. Show me where I'm really materially motivated in my bhajan or in my devotional service, in my chanting. Where is that material contamination and motivation? Just to be aware, like Babaji Maharaj, he has a lot of compassion. And I believe that if we are aware and sincere, honest with ourselves, then he's really ready to help us. Yeah. Anything else? Gaura Kishor Das Babaji Maharaj ki
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Gaura Premanande.
Hare Krishna.
Oh, Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.